The Holy Gospel according to St. John, the 11th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. And again, because it's almost the entirety of the 11th chapter, you may be seated for this. Now a certain man was ill, Lazarus of Bethany, the village of Mary and her sister Martha. Mary was the one who anointed the Lord with perfume and wiped his feet with her hair. Her brother Lazarus was ill. So the sisters sent a message to Jesus, "Lord, he whom you love is ill." But when Jesus heard it, he said, "This illness does not lead to death. Rather, it is for God's glory, so that the Son of Man may be glorified through it." Accordingly, though Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, after having heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then, after this, he said to his disciples, "Let us go to Judea again." The disciples said to him, "Rabbi, the Jews were just now trying to stone you, and are you going there again?" Jesus answered, "Are there not 12 hours of daylight? Those who walk during the day do not stumble, because they see the light of this world. But those who walk at night stumble, because the light is not in them." After saying this, he told them, "Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I am going there to awaken him." The disciples said to him, "Lord, if he has fallen asleep, he will be all right." Jesus, however, had been speaking about his death, but they thought that he was referring merely to sleep. Then Jesus told them plainly, "Lazarus is dead. For your sake I am glad I was not there, so that you may believe. But let us go to him." Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us also go, that we may die with him." When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, some 2 miles away, and many of the Jews who had come to Martha and Mary to console them about their brother. When Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went and met him, while Mary stayed at home. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now I know that God will give you whatever you ask of him." Jesus said to her, "Your brother will rise again." Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection on the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. Those who believe in me, even though they die, will live. And everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" She said to him, "Yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, the one coming into the world." When she had said this, she went back and called her sister Mary and told her privately, "The teacher is here and is calling for you." When she heard it, she got up quickly and went to him. Now Jesus had not yet come to the village, but was still at the place where Martha had met him. The Jews who were with her in the house, consoling her, saw Mary get up quickly and go out. They followed her because they thought that she was going to the tomb to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was and saw him, she knelt at his feet and said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." When Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he was greatly disturbed in spirit and deeply moved. He said, "Where have you laid him?" They said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus began to weep. So the Jews said, "See how he loved him." But some of them said, "Could not he who have opened the eyes of the blind man have kept this man from dying?" Then Jesus, again greatly disturbed, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone was lying against it. Jesus said, "Take away the stone." Martha, the sister of the dead man, said to him, "Lord, already there is a stench, because he has been dead for 4 days." Jesus said to her, "Did I not tell you that if you believed, you would see the glory of God?" So they took away the stone. And Jesus looked upward and said, "Father, I thank you for having heard me. I knew that you always hear me, but I have said this for the sake of the crowd standing here, so that they may believe that you sent me." When he had said this, he cried with a loud voice, "Lazarus, come out." The dead man came out, his hands and feet bound with strips of cloth, and his face wrapped in a cloth. Jesus said to them, "Unbind him, let him go." Many of the Jews, therefore, who had come with Mary and seen what Jesus did, believed in him. The Gospel of the Lord. So as today's Gospel story ends, Jesus tells people to unbind Lazarus and let him go. And then John adds this parenthetical comment that many of the people who came with Martha and Mary and saw what Jesus did believed in him. So at this point, we expect the next line to be, "And they all lived happily ever after." Or at least, that's the way we would like the story to end. Over the past couple of Sundays, we have read about the man born blind and the Samaritan woman at the well. And we could imagine that having encountered Jesus in their lives, things just got better and better, and they lived happily ever after. And in fact, we never hear anything more about the Samaritan woman or the man born blind. So we could imagine whatever we would like. And for sure, when I have been through a difficult situation in my life, and I feel like Jesus has helped me overcome it, I just want to forget all about it and live happily ever after. Doesn't always work out like that, but I would like to do that. Probably you would too. But, spoiler alert, this is not how the story of Lazarus, Mary, and Martha ends. Actually, for as long as that reading was that I just read, it's just the beginning of the story. It goes on for basically another chapter yet. And in fact, this story is the pivotal story in John's Gospel, which sets up the whole narrative of Jesus' death and resurrection. What's happened up to this point is that Jesus has been attracting a lot of attention from many different sorts of people, and in John's Gospel, this has been going on for about 3 years now. The attention includes the attention of temple authorities who are increasingly worried that Jesus, or the people around him, will start an uprising which will cause the Romans to crush them and destroy the temple. So, they would like to either arrest Jesus or to stone him. And for this reason, Jesus has been hanging out with his disciples down by the Jordan River, out of harm's way. But when he is told that Lazarus is sick, after waiting 2 days, Jesus returns to Bethany, which is a village just outside Jerusalem, and there he performs the final sign in John's Gospel. He raises Lazarus from the dead, which is the one and only time in John's Gospel that Jesus raises anybody from the dead. And he does this after Lazarus has been dead for 4 days, which is a sign in and of itself because people believe that the spirit of the deceased person would hang around the body for 3 days and after that go away, and so there was no hope. This is never found in the Bible, but this is what people in that culture at that time tended to believe. And so Jesus waits to this moment where all hope is gone. Now this clearly, therefore, impresses a lot of people. After all, anybody getting raised from the dead will impress a lot of people, but it doesn't impress everybody. So here is the very next verse after what I just read. Not happily ever after, but some of them went to the Pharisees and told them what Jesus had done. They ratted him out. And so this event becomes the final straw. John reports, from this day on, they plan to put Jesus to death. Jesus can't go about openly anymore, and so he temporarily heads back to the wilderness area until Passover arrives, when he again returns to have dinner with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. It's at this point that Martha washes his feet. That hasn't happened yet in what I just read. And it's after this dinner that Jesus rides into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. And because many people hear that Jesus is with them at dinner, John says that they go to see Jesus, but also to see Lazarus, because he's the guy that Jesus raised from the dead. And so, John reports, the chief priests planned to put Lazarus to death as well, since it was on account of him that many of the Jews were deserting and were believing in Jesus. The poor guy gets sick, and he dies. But Jesus raises him from the dead, and yet, just 22 verses later, he's not living happily ever after. There's a plot to kill him again. So, spoiler alert, it is not happily ever after, at least as we usually think of happily ever after, when we imagine that that means that Jesus will come along in my life, do something great for me, and then I will live happy and stress-free. But actually, the spoiler alert points us to something bigger and better. Because the spoiler alert is the reminder that Jesus does these signs not to make a few select individuals happy and carefree, but to give them hope and strength to face a future which is often not happy and not carefree. One of the most important things that people learn about Jesus in the story of Lazarus is not just that Jesus can raise the dead, but that Jesus hadn't forgotten about them or given up on them, even when they themselves had lost hope. I mean, it had been 4 days, there is no hope. But Jesus doesn't give up. And there is hope. And that's a really important thing for all of us to remember when life is a mess and things are not looking up in the world around us. When it feels like things are not about to be happily ever after for us in our world or in our personal lives. This is the moment where we sit back and go, is Jesus actually there or not? And that's what people were wondering when Lazarus was dead. And they found out, yes, Jesus was with them in the midst of that. And part of having that strength is that Lazarus himself has to face a death threat again. But now he does it with the knowledge that it's not going to be the end for him. Jesus is going to be with him there. Somehow or other, Jesus is going to see him through whatever problem he has. And that's what people figure out in this story, which does not have the happily ever after ending. The spoiler alert also reminds us that my life and even my pain are not simply about me, but how I can be a sign in somebody else's life. Unlike the Samaritan woman at the well or the man born blind, Lazarus, never has a speaking part. He doesn't say a single word. But because of him, many other people come to experience life and hope. Lazarus is important, not because of what he says or what he does, but because God's works are in fact done through him. And this is a reminder to us that through both our happiness and our pain, Jesus is often working to bring life and hope to others through us in ways that we might not even know about. I mean, Lazarus is clueless that he's giving hope to whole numbers of people around him. But he is, because God is working through him in ways that he doesn't even know about, because frankly, he's dead. So he doesn't know this, but God is using him to give life and hope to other people too. The sign is not just for him, but for others. And that's the way God works in our lives as well. And this spoiler alert ending, maybe most importantly, reminds us that even our own death is not the end of us. And this is not because Lazarus is temporarily resuscitated by Jesus. Lazarus, he's going to die again. We don't know whether the authorities succeed in killing him off or whether he dies in old age, but one way or another, he will die again. Rather, we know that death is not the end because this story begins and points us toward the death and the resurrection of Jesus. And because Jesus lives, death will not have the final word for Lazarus or for any of us either. So the story of Lazarus does not end with, and they all lived happily ever after. But that's okay, because happily ever after is how fairy tales end, and this story isn't one of those. Instead, the rest of this story reminds us of something real and something better. And the real and better thing is that Jesus never abandons us, even in our darkest tombs. The real and better thing is that Jesus can give hope and strength to others through the witness of our lives and even our deaths in ways that we may never know and cannot imagine. And the real and better thing is that the real end of the whole story isn't death or merely temporary resuscitation, but resurrection and eternal life.